this is really our time to bring in a new story around this and to give ourselves and each other permission to understand more of the subtlety of what it is to be human. We must be courageous enough to hold vision and also to understand that the timelines that we live amongst are bigger than we know. We need to nurture these seeds that live inside of us and bring about this possibility. And we need to do it without clinging on to what the outcome will be. Welcome, dear ones. We have some exciting news in the seeds being planted for the future is beautiful. Our new community app is starting to be developed, which will connect our community globally. And we are starting to plan a physical co-created gathering on some beautiful land in the UK in early September. If you want to know more about these, make sure you get our weekly newsletter where we share all updates and how you can get involved. We also have the next cohort of the Beautiful Leadership Immersion starting on the 26th of April. So you can find out more about joining the immersion or my leadership mentoring if you go to our website, www.thefutureisbeautiful.co, and click on courses. This week's episode is a solo one from me, sprinkled with some voices from our most recent beautiful leaders. We explore the themes of deep listening, visioning, and intuition in this conversation called Seeding Our Visionary Gardens, Embodying Beautiful Leadership in a Complex World. We contemplate the question, how do we cultivate a life of deep listening and purpose? I hope that this conversation opens up a deeper sense of your own possibility. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Ghadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. It is so beautiful to be sharing with you directly today. The interview that I had planned, it just didn't work out. There wasn't the flow and the scheduling. And I tried a couple of others and they also didn't quite come together. And something that has been a big practice of mine of late is really living from that place of deep listening where we don't push things so much and we allow there to be a flow. And of course, there's a balance with this because there are things, especially when you're trying to change something or there is a system that's dying and it's uncomfortable, where you do have to put something forward that is going to be met with resistance. There's also a lot of ways in which we're used to kind of putting ourselves up against so much resistance, even when we don't need to. And it's this complexity that I wanted to talk about today and share a little bit around. As I've been on my own path for, an entire lifetime, but inquiring into how does one live a life of purpose and meaning? How does one contribute to the world that we live in a way that honors everything that we have been given and honors all of the privilege, the power, the opportunity, the journey of our ancestors, and also honors the future and honors the future generations and the earth and everything that's more than human. and way beyond the personal. At the same time, I have also been in a deep journey on understanding my patterns and understanding the ways in which I show up in the world and the ways in which I show up in my relationships and how I react and why. What within that can be tweaked, can be shifted, can be transformed, transmuted. And what within that is deeply karmic, is deeply ancestral, is part of what I'm here to dance with. Over the years, I feel like I've wanted the answers at different times. I've wanted somebody to tell me, it's like this, you do it like that. Where I've really got to is that everything is so subjective, and we can always find a different set of proof that explains one particular perspective or one particular way of doing things. That's how we're taught to debate. When I was at school and university in like the British system and in that world of kind of high achievement, a lot of it was around, how can you put together a rigorous argument that basically shames, humiliates, and takes down any possibility of anything else. One of the ways that you're taught to do this is to do it for both sides. So you know what might come up on the other side, and you have something clever to say to that. And you're actually taught that you can find that proof that you need for both sides. And I find it to be the same with all of the great questions of this time. For example, this question around the vaccine. And many of you have written to me saying that you feel confused and conflicted around it, and that we've been given this big conundrum where there is a lot of evidence to say that the vaccine is an amazing piece of science that has come together very quickly and is this place where modern technology has provided something magnificent that can help our lives return to some kind of normalcy in the ways in which we're allowed to relate and connect to each other. And then on the other side, there is a lot around how dangerous this vaccination is, and narratives around heavy metals and overpopulation, what might be behind this vaccine. And then there's middle ground. People know people that have had strong reactions to various vaccines in the past. There is the truth that many people have made a lot of money during this pandemic, that you don't even need a huge conspiracy theory or what we call conspiracy theories to see that. You can just know that, people are making all these tests, for example, private tests, and those tests are bringing in money for businesses, and that there is a lot of profit that has been made out of this pandemic. And even if you look at how many of the world's billionaires have become a lot richer during the past year, whilst other people around the world have been struggling in so many ways. And so we've seen this big shift in the inequality gap. And you can find these different explanations for why that's happening. And with the vaccine, I did at one point wonder about doing an episode where we asked various guests to come in and share if they were taking the vaccine and why they were taking it or why they weren't taking it. That could be a really interesting show to hear those different perspectives. For reasons of just production and organization around it, I haven't taken that one on. But it's a really live example of, how do we know truth, or how do we know truth for ourselves? And how do we embrace the complexity of this time and our desire to really, really know something? And be told that this is the truth, that this is the path. What it comes down to for me is, how do we cultivate a way of really deep listening, of giving permission to the wisdom within ourselves, our intuition, to be heard, but also to really be quite rigorous in our discernment. So we're not creating a kind of falsehood where we trust this thing blindly that is our intuition. And we do it from a place where it's just a way of us kind of fortifying our misgivings or our trauma or our patterning. And this dance is very complex. And it's also a dance that isn't easily and quickly made clear. And I feel like that's part of what we have to embrace on this path of beautiful leadership, on this path of becoming a leader of our own lives and opening up to living a life that is in relationship with so much more than the intellect and the knowledge that already exists in this world. And so we're opening ourselves up in a way where we can listen more deeply. We also can bring in a really profound quality of curiosity, resilience, and humility to be wrong or to be exploring the same pattern within ourselves that we may have explored many times before. And I found that this has come up a lot in a lot of the work that I've done around transformation through retreats and one-to-one work, of meeting these same aspects within ourselves, and that there is a quality to our own story, to who we are, that is the material of our life, and that these aspects of us will keep coming up in different ways, and that is part of the mystery and the delight of this adventure. As I speak to you now, we are completing the second cohort of the Beautiful Leadership Immersion. It's been an incredible journey both times, and one that is ongoing and continuing, and that will open up again in a few weeks, of this dance between a diligence of self-awareness and awareness of what is happening in this world, and being prepared to see ourselves and to let go of what we can let go of, and invite in what we can invite in, and allow our perspectives to be radically shifted away from where the conditioning lies, and to recognize how cultural stories, how cultural systems of oppressions have shaped how we think and how we feel and what we deem to be possible. And in particular, the systems of racism and white supremacy, of patriarchy and suppression of the feminine, and of capitalism, and the story that we're here to constantly produce and to suffer and to be in this cycle. And as we unpick these stories, as we unpick these systems within ourselves, we find so much more that's possible. We find ever stronger ways of navigating through this life in a way that is meaningful, that brings beauty, purpose, a quality of aliveness to everything that we do. When I reflect on my own journey and, in particular, my own working journey, one of the things that I recognize is that I often had a quality of vision and I could see that something was possible. Then there was almost a simplicity to it. And if I had the inner freedom and the kind of the outer freedom in my day-to-day moves, I could have simply followed the pulse, and the pulse that was guiding me towards how it was possible to bring that vision into this world. That it didn't always come with a complete guide of each step and how it would unfold, but the visions always came with a sense of what was possible and what the next step towards it was. And that along that journey, I would then find the next step. I would find the people. I would find the possibility. When I reflect on what stood in the way, I realized that I spent so much of my time either seeking approval or validation or mentorship, really, permission and encouragement to bring my visions to the world. And I spent a lot of my energy on fighting against both systems and individuals that my vision scared, that didn't understand my vision and that didn't understand how that was possible, how that could create a life as well as bring a project or a social business or a campaign or something into the world, but how that might leave me. It's interesting because in some ways it feels like wasted time when I reflect back on it. And in others, it feels like by spending that time that was in the difficult aspects of bringing a vision into the world, of learning to trust myself, and the way that it forced me to go so deep in my journey of self-awareness and my desire to understand more of how we as humans operate and are formed, of what creates that deep inner pain and suffering and frustration, of the loneliness of, finding one's place in a world that didn't quite make sense and trying to live in just a very slightly different way and with a slightly different sense of possibility. One of the things that I always found really challenging was the cynicism of British culture and the uniform of it all, from like the uniforms of how one would dress or how one would act or how one would speak, and what I would used to refer to as the masks. But of course, these masks have taken on a different meaning and understanding in this pandemic of what it is to wear a mask. But I often found that I couldn't find my way through all these masks, and that I was often being told that I needed to wear certain masks in order to make something possible. And I knew that there was always going to be more than that in this world that was possible. And that there was a way of relating to people where we didn't have to wear those kinds of masks, where we didn't have to pretend to be something that we weren't, where we didn't have to make ourselves shallower or join in with certain things or say certain things in order to be accepted. And that it was possible to believe in living a life of deep connection with soul and deep connection with vision and with a sense of a meaning and a purpose of what we might be here to dance with in this life and how we can bring it together. And at this place of now so many podcasts, we've done 130 since 2017. And of course, this is off the back of work that began in 2010 around asking people like you and me, people that didn't necessarily have titles or profile or any reason why what they have to say might be considered important. But humans here on Earth, nonetheless, and asking this question, what is the future you choose? What is the world that you want to live in? What is it that you see as possible? And how can we begin to co-create that? 10 years into this journey, I have learned, of course, to embrace more of the complexity and also to see that question isn't naive, that it's a key, and that we must be courageous enough to hold vision and also to understand that the timelines that we live amongst are bigger than we know, that we don't need to be attached to the outcome. And it's not about achieving a certain outcome with our vision, but it is about planting these seeds of possibility. And when I started this podcast, it came from a deep feeling that so many of the conversations that I listened to were all about proving something and knowing something. In a way, knowing something that was already known, knowing something that was already accepted, saying the clever thing, knowing what the clever thing to say was, and winning an argument, being able to trip someone up, or asking the really shallow questions because, we all just want to have fun and make light. And I knew that what my soul was craving was a space of deep conversations and a space of not knowing all the answers and some solidarity with the complexity of a life, of a society, of a global collective, with some solidarity amongst the knowledge of our interconnectedness, and not only the possibility and beauty of that, but also the shame and the guilt, the confusion of living in a world that is so unequal and so incredibly wasteful, where not only do we waste so much stuff, we have all this stuff going into landfills, and it feels like this never-ending cycle. We started to get the plastic bags out of the ocean, only to now be filling the ocean with our disposable masks. And how do we manage the simpleness of our day-to-day life? This rich inner world that each one of us has, that is complex and challenging in its own right, and then in this wider system. And when I started to have these conversations, of course, so many people said, don't do it, and you need to do 4-minute videos, and no one wants to listen to that. And that's not how things are done. What's opened up is that there is this longing for explorations that really embrace the complexity and that sense of overwhelm that many of us feel at different moments, along with the sense of possibility and inspiration, and also what is possible when we speak from transmission rather than plan everything, then only allow ourselves to say what has been said before. And a beautiful example of that is the recent episode with Claire Dubois on this podcast, where as both of us sat there unknowing what was going to unfold and really opening up a space of deep listening and transmission, that things came through that needed to be said, that wanted to be said. As those words came through, I felt them shift something inside of me. And that is also what so many of you have been sharing as you've listened to that episode and many other episodes along this journey. The conversation with Pat McCabe comes through as one of those that was transformative. And the very first episode with Charles Eisenstein, and so many others along the way. And when I pressed record here, I also came without a plan. I'm sitting in my bedroom, looking out onto the ocean, holding a microphone in my hand, sitting with an intention that what I share with you now may be of some support in this journey. And it may give you some kind of permission to live something that is important to you. And this aspect of community is so important because we realize that there are many of us that crave this sense of meaning and connection and want to live in the way of beauty. And I'm really, really excited to share that we have pressed the start button on building a community app, transforming what has been Presence Collective membership and also patronage into this membership that will focus more around connecting all of you, this sense of global community and how global community mixed with ways of meeting each other and getting together more will open up more and more permission and strength in your relationship with trust and your relationship with birthing into this world. That what you hold, the seeds that came into this world with you. The immersion journey is really beautiful, and we have, it's a group setting. So there's an opening ceremony and a closing ceremony and different sessions along the way where we meet as a group. And then you are free to explore through the incredible videos and masterclasses. And we go through these 7 different themes. And there are people that have been on this podcast that come along the way to share masterclasses and to take you through different experiences. Each week you receive something new to go through and to open something up. And it really is offered in this way of transmission. And this is something that I learned through sitting with spiritual teachers, that you could write down the words that they were saying. And of course they were profound. And there was something in the words that, you're like, oh yes, that. But it wasn't about where the words touch you in your mental intellect, but it was actually about how the words transformed you as they were being spoken. That listening with your entire body, that listening with your soul, that allowing of the information to be shifted and transformed in every cell. That is the intention that went into the creation of the immersion, that each video, each masterclass is a different transmission in itself, and that it opens up possibility. With the leadership mentoring that I offer, which is the one-to-one work, And I don't talk very much about it. And it's all tied up in some aspects of my own fear and shame about embracing the mystical and fully opening up to this kind of work, which is way beyond intellect. And so what happens in the leadership mentoring sessions is similar to what happens in the one-to-one sessions that I offer, which I call intuitive therapy. But we will talk about something that's going on for you. It's like you bring something that has either been coming up time and time again in your life or something that is really, really present for you. We talk it through. And in that space of talking, we're understanding more about it. We're creating a relationship between the subconscious and the conscious mind so that they can work together and so that there's that real readiness to release these patterns and this information from the subconscious. It's really quite beautiful and remarkable how these sessions unfold. I can give you a recent example. There's a client that came to me in the session saying, that she felt a bit of a block with her creativity and that she had all this vision and she had these ideas that she knew that she wanted to do. Yet there was something that was just stopping her ability to do them and to take the action. And we talked through some of this. And one of the things that came up was a deeper connection to the feminine quality of pleasure and how pleasure and creativity are so interconnected. And you can just check out the female anatomy for that the clitoris, it works like in your 80s, your 90s. It's not just there for the purpose of reproducing children, but actually it's about connecting to that sense of pleasure and creativity and relationship with all of life. We were having a little laugh and opening up this possibility of having a deeper relationship with pleasure. And then what came through when we were in the energy work part of the session was that there were deep patterns and ancestral patterns. This particular woman was of a Middle Eastern heritage, and there were aspects of that were kind of holding back that ability to connect to one's creativity and to really have permission to bring one's vision into this world. And I always find it so fascinating when you trace back our lineages, especially for women, but for men as well, of how much has shifted in a short space of time. And when I think about the cultural rules that my parents' generation had to adhere to, and then my grandparents' generation, for my grandmothers, there wasn't really another choice aside from being a housewife. There were a lot of rules to follow around how one was a housewife and how one would behave. I can't believe sometimes the level of freedom that my life has been given. And then, of course, that's come with its own challenges of how one navigates that and how one understands that. And so in this session, we were clearing some of the deeper aspects of what was being held back and then opening up these seeds of possibility. And so if we have these seeds, that we came with, they're part of who we are. These seeds they're planted in our childhood. They're different kind of qualities and possibilities that live within us. But of course, we can only grow anything that has the right environment, right? You need the right soil, the right kind of amount of water, the right sunlight, the right kind of temperatures, all of that. So if your family and society doesn't have the right conditions to plant some of these seeds, then they don't get planted and they can't get planted. And so many of us have bags and bags of seeds that, just got put in the garden shed. No one really knew what to do with them. And then, of course, they get forgotten and more things get piled up and they get, suddenly they're really even hard to access and you forget that they're there. And what this work does, this work that I offer in my mentoring sessions and also in the intuitive therapy sessions, is that after we've created the space and we've cleared the energetic patterns, we then can plant these seeds into that space. I always find it very extraordinary that clients really feel these seeds coming into their system. It, of course, means that you have to approach it from a different place of mind and really be able to listen to your body and to feel into the subtleties, which is why it really helps to have practices in your life that cultivate the subtle body, meditation, all kinds of yoga, from the asana to mantra, to opening up into devotion, to opening up to earth wisdom and being able to listen to deeper aspects of earth. Really like opening up those clairs, those different qualities of sensation that we have that are much deeper than the five senses that we've been taught. And we all have these abilities within us. And I've come to realize that they're really not special. They're just not recognized and not cultivated. And then they're fantasized in our kind of cultural media, in books, in films, in TV programs, made to be sort of like paranormal and weird. And actually, when you really talk to people and you get to know people, you'll find that so many people have these abilities. They maybe just don't really know how to use them, how to cultivate them, or they find them completely terrifying and try and pretend that they're not there. And this that I'm talking about, on one level, it's really subtle. It can just be like that ability to feel something inside of oneself. And on a deeper level, it might be in the realms of premonition or listening deeply, being able to hear whispers from the trees, from the earth, be able to know more than what it is that we see. And so what happens is when we plant these seeds, we open up this possibility. And I share in my book, Intuition, some of the new science that's come up around this. And you can find that in the Be Open part of the book. Because for me, it was always really important to have to explain like what was happening or why this was possible, because of my conditioning made it really hard to just embrace the mystical and embrace these deeper layers of life, even though I felt them and experienced them so fully. Yet I had to do so much work to open up connection with that rational, conscious part of my mind and give permission. And now I really feel that it's so normal. We're in a time where we don't have to be afraid of it anymore, and we can embrace more of who we are as humans, and that it just doesn't make sense to be living from such a small aspect of who we are, especially when we face so many challenges as a species, as a wider part of this interconnected world, and with the very real issues and threats that we have around climate and around the violence and the machines of the corporations and all of these different aspects that are going to affect our future and that very much affect our lives now. And so it just doesn't make sense to me anymore that we might hide from the truth of who we are. It's very understandable why. And we have to remember that through the witch hunts, through colonialism, that a lot of the cultures that were very real, that were intuitive, where we were more connected to the deeper wisdom of who we are, that they were really wiped out and pushed underground, and that there was a very real fear and danger, that we're all living that history. We're all affected by that past, and that this is really our time to bring in a new story around this, to give ourselves and each other permission to understand more of the subtlety of what it is to be human. It's so beautiful when we do. And what I find is that, with these seeds, working with clients, I've now been offering these sessions for, 6 or 7 years, the mentoring around the same amount of time. So I've seen and witnessed people go through this. And the way that I give these seeds is that then you integrate them over a certain number of weeks each day. And as you're integrating them, it's also training you to have a deeper relationship with your subtle body. Through this process, you feel these qualities becoming part of you more and more each day. And then they become a very natural part of who you are, a part of you that you don't have to effort in order to remember. It's really very profound and beautiful. And it's hard for me to explain more than that how it works, except that this much I know: we need to nurture these seeds that live inside of us and bring about this possibility. And we need to do it without clinging on to what the outcome will be. And this is all part of what beautiful leadership is. It's really being able to live in connection with the beauty of our soul and live in a way where we truly embrace what is possible at this time. And that just as technology is always redefining what it is to be human, that we're constantly experiencing more and more possibility, that we also have to remember that what it is to be human is constantly being redefined, and what's possible for humans is constantly being redefined. And so embracing a way of living deep in that possibility within ourselves and encouraging that possibility in each other. And as always, I want to say thank you for being part of this journey of co-creating more beauty into this world, of being courageous and wanting to explore deeply how this is possible. I really look forward to having the means for us to connect more deeply. And one of the things that we're exploring is a in-person gathering coming up in the not too distant future, as well as this global app, which is going to be able to do all kinds of cool things that create more and more connection and possibility and allow us to reflect more and more to each other what is possible. Hello, we're taking a short pause from the conversation. On behalf of our team and our community, thank you for being here and co-creating The Future is Beautiful. Much dedication, love, and time goes into the production of this show. We believe in being advertising free in a world that's always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And so we make this show with you and for you, thanks to your support. There are 3 ways you can be more involved, so we can share the vision, wisdom, and creativity here as we explore what it means to be a human in this time. You can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends, posting episodes on social media, and doing iTunes reviews. You can support as a patron by making a monthly or one-off donation of your choice. And with this, you join the Global Patrons group and monthly video calls where we share connection and insight. You get to know the other amazing patrons from around the world, their stories and their work, and you offer direct support to me and the team, as well as being brought into the behind the scenes of creating something like this. It sounds like a lot, but it's as much or as little as you want to get involved in. You can become a member of Presence, our membership collective of care and practice, where we explore how to embody the themes of the podcast with workshops, calls, special events, tree whispers, and powerful tools, practices, and rituals that you can bring into your life. This is open to absolutely everybody as we create an inclusive and diverse space that celebrates well-being as a human right, where we explore together what it means to be creative, courageous, and connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. This is about embodying sacred activism. We love meeting patrons and Presence members and how being part in this way weaves our lives together as well as making this show possible. If anything from this conversation has moved or inspired you, please get more involved. All information can be found at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. This show really can't go on without your patronage and Presence membership, so please do make it happen. And now, back to the conversation.
My name is Sally Ann. I live outside of New York City in the States. I work in corporate in a learning and development role. I just completed the Beautiful Leadership Immersion, which was beautiful and characteristic of the whole experience. It was absolutely a beautifully designed, beautifully curated, perfectly paced experience that Amisha designed for the participants in the program. So I joined kind of on a intuitive hunch after having been an avid follower of Amisha's podcast and a reader of her book, Intuition. The concepts that she explores so deeply were the kinds of questions I had as they relate to leadership. Like, what does the sacred have to do with leadership? Trauma and shadow work, edge walking and flow. I was just so curious and excited to explore in a deeper way some of these concepts that I hope will inform my leadership as a collective and as individuals walk into this new space, this new era. So I had been thinking about it and then just got an intuitive sense that it was something I needed to be a part of. And it was such a, like all intuition guided decisions, perhaps, it was absolutely perfect experience for me to participate in, especially throughout the winter of 2021, winter 2020 and 2021, during, a time of deep wintering and deep darkness. It was for me, an incredible companion to explore concepts around hope and the future and beauty and a deep meaning, and how we can bring deep meaning to how we lead in every aspect of our lives, in our homes, in our communities, in our careers, in our creative pursuits. So I cannot recommend this course and this experience, it's more than a course, highly enough. I also want to comment on the group that I became part of as part of this immersion. There's something about the mission of this course that drew just the right people to have these very, very deep explorations of the topics at, periodic times throughout the number of months we were together. They came from different backgrounds, different parts of the world, and their companionship and their input into the course and their own reflections on what the content meant to them was so enriching and just brought so much of the topics to life. So I want to thank Amisha. I want to encourage anyone who's thinking about the Beautiful Leadership Immersion to take the leap. It was incredible. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Rebecca, and I'm in the United States. I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Institute for Collective Wellbeing. We are excited about imagining what creates the conditions for collective well-being to emerge and trying to understand the gap between how well-being operates now and where it needs to be so that it's of service to all. I was drawn to the mentoring journey by way of the podcast. A friend who has the most lovely clothing store, all handmade garments that she's really infused with so much love and soul, shared the podcast with me, and it struck me on so many levels. I have really appreciated the idea of beauty as a framework or an organizing principle for life, and the way Amisha used it and the way I hadn't heard before. It was affirming because I had, in my past consulting job, used beauty as a framing or a core value of that work, feeling that beauty elicits joy and imagination and creativity. So it was a sense of coming back to a feeling about beauty that I felt like home. Also, I remember one of the episodes when I first started listening where Amisha talked about ways of knowing and what's valuable information, what ways of sensing into the world, have value. And in the context that I'm living in the US, we have a very clear idea about what quote unquote counts as knowledge, as data, as fact. And to hear a conversation about what is lost, what we sacrifice when we quiet the inner voice, the intuition of knowing, was a reminder to me, not only that that voice is alive inside of me, but that I have a commitment to myself and others to honor that voice. So when I heard that Amisha was doing the one-on-one mentoring, it felt like a real opening to explore these ideas in greater depth. I don't honestly even know where to begin in terms of what has emerged since working with Amisha over the past several months. It feels like traumas that had lived inside of me my entire life that I had worked on in my spiritual practice, in seeking support through therapy and support through dear friends, had continued to be very much alive in me despite a real intentionality to grow and to move forward. And I believe in the alchemy of whatever it is that Amisha does in that space we shared together, because I am changing. I have changed more in the last few months in believing in myself, honoring myself, trusting myself more than probably every other kind of work I've done in the past combined. So for others who are thinking about the mentoring possibility, I can't recommend it enough. One of my favorite things Amisha did on the first day we were together, she was explaining kind of her process, and she said, you don't have to worry about time, or if something doesn't work and we have to change it, or you say something, you don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about me. Like I will take care of me and let you know if I need something. And it was just like such a beautiful way of modeling eloquent boundaries and also giving me then the permission to say, well, yeah, and these are some things about me. These are some things that I need to be okay, naming them, owning them, loving them. I feel like I've only really scratched the surface of what has happened over the last several months. But when I think about the mentorship program, I know there is something there for those of us who are on the verge of becoming and who are on the verge of awakening and need a trusted thought partner, not to give us permission, but to shed some light on a path forward. I wish that for everyone.
I'm Merlin Nation, and I run an animation company called Work in Progress with my wife. We work with charities, social enterprises, and not-for-profits, helping them tell their stories and communicate their ideas. We set up Work in Progress to align our personal and professional beliefs, really, as we wanted our work to benefit people and the planet rather than products and profits. And we're in Somerset in England. What first drew me to the Beautiful Leadership Immersion was having listened to the Future is Beautiful podcast for years and being really intrigued and inspired by the conversations happening there. I wasn't hearing them anywhere else and felt a real pull to be involved in that dialogue. So I joined the immersion on a bit of a whim. Another full lockdown had just started in the UK at the beginning of January, and I wanted to feel like I'd grown in some way through that time. And exploring the themes of the podcast at a deeper level seemed like a good way to do that. A powerful part of this journey for me was the combination of going really deep into lots of expansive new ideas, but also learning practical ways to help you build resilience and navigate through what you learn about yourself and the wider world, and ultimately the convergence of those things. And it was experienced as part of a group of really beautiful, like-minded souls in what became a very safe and supportive space, being expertly held by Amisha. And I really enjoyed and appreciated that aspect of it. The rich mix of people that Amisha has brought together for this course are wonderful examples in themselves of the beauty humans are capable of. And it was a joy to spend time with them. Like many of us, talking about my own leadership felt a bit awkward and uncomfortable at first. But through doing this course, it's given me a real sense of agency in seeing how I can make a positive difference in all sorts of ways. That and my newfound understanding of the interconnectedness of the issues we face has been a profound shift for me. The course has empowered me with a newfound clarity in my intentions, but with some practical examples of how I can employ beautiful leadership in so many aspects of my life.
My name is Susan. I live in Adelaide, South Australia. This land is Kaurna land, and I acknowledge and pay my respects to all elders past, present and emerging. I am fifth generation Australian and grateful to call this place home. My ancestors came here as free settlers from Scotland, Ireland, Cornwall, Wales, Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. I was born and grew up on Maru land, which is on the banks of the River Murray in South Australia. I'm thankful for all that this land taught me. She taught me to have deep reciprocity for the earth and all that belonged to her. I would listen to the stories that the land would share through the seasons, the rains, the droughts, the life, the death and the rebirth, the abundance and the scarcity. She taught me to feel the land for the ancestors and to listen to their stories of wisdom and belonging. It was here I fell in love with story and the power that it has to create connection and change. Today I've made my work all about story, and for the past decade I've caught hundreds of stories across Australia in a business I created called the Story Captures. We use participatory methodologies to analyse story data captured on documentary film for monitoring, evaluation, social impact measurement and human-centred design. We also create documentary reports to accompany written reports. At present, we mainly work in remote Australia on programs with Australians First Nations people. I am blessed to spend a lot of my time with these people on country. It feeds my heart and my soul. I've been drawn to Amisha's work for the past year and love her intuitive interview style and her ability to capture stories from the heart and of great substance. Feeling we are coming to the completion of an old collective story and at the cusp of an emerging new story, I felt the calling to participate in Amisha's Beautiful Leadership Immersion. And indeed, what a beautiful immersion it has been. Carl Jung once said that if the underpinning cultural myth is dying and is no longer adequate for people, then the myth-making power resides in individuals, and that the birth of the personal myth in the imagination of one individual or a group of individuals can literally spread and change the world. After reading this quote, I was inspired to create my own new personal myth, a new story from the wisdom that I have embraced from many sources, including the Beautiful Leadership Immersion. This is my new story. I am an edge walker. I walk between worlds and have the ability to build bridges between them. I am grateful for all the paths I adventure, in the past, in the present, and in the future. I embody what they reveal to me. I have a strong sense of my inner life and am deeply grounded and effective in my external world. My work and the people that I work with are aligned to my deepest values. I trust the unfolding of my life and my contribution to this world. I have the ability to listen, to deeply listen, beyond the words that are spoken. I consciously tune into a power greater than myself for guidance and inspiration. I have discernment to make clear, unconscious choices, and I welcome the seed of my wisdom and my worth. I embrace my shadows and accept what I can change and what I cannot. I have a deep understanding that my shadows are the key to me gaining greater self-awareness and understanding. I remember and honour my ancestors, and I am committed to healing what trauma I can and expressing their love and the gifts that I embody. I am committed to being a loving ancestor for all those to come. I have a profound sense of belonging and interbeing and have deep reciprocity for the earth and all its beings, both gross and subtle. I see the future as beautiful and contribute to this future daily by filling my life with song, music, dance, prayer, meditation, nature, adventure, wonder, and magic. And as I bravely walk towards being an elder, I do so with humility and grace and embrace this archetype to become the weaver of dreams for all the grandchildren to come.
Thank you all so much for being part of this community. And it's so incredible to hear the voices of people from this community. I always love these episodes where I ask you to share. For me, it is about what we're creating and how we come together so that this podcast is a living element of us. It's not just something that we consume, but it's something that really shapes who we are and what is possible in this world. And so if you feel the call of this invitation to beautiful leadership and to the mentoring and to the immersion program, then you can find all of the details on our website, www.thefutureisbeautiful.co, or on www.amisha.co.uk. And you can also go to our page, community and support on the website and find out how you can become a patron or join Presence Collective, which will all merge into this new app and community membership at some point in the not too distant future. Thank you again for being part of this adventure. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow.
Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question: how will you create beauty in the world?